guests today are David Max Brown and Mashida M. I'm saying Mashida M because I can't pronounce his surname, which is an insult, but rather than destroy it. But it's really lovely to have you here. You're the producers of a movie called Noem, Skollie, which I know what it means literally, but I don't know what it means figuratively.
How do you answer that? What does it mean figuratively?
You try.
I mean, let me rather give you like how the film came about. Then maybe that will answer your question. John Freddy lives in the Cape Flats. He's about 70 years old, 70 years this year. And he's been writing this film all his life. That's the only way I can put it. And he and David met about 10 to 15 years ago and started working on this project. I came on board. My background is as an actress. And I came on board and David gave me the script. I read the script. At the time I was doing script editing. And I was working on the script editing. I was doing a script editing course, and there was a woman from CakeNet who was then a commissioning editor that I happened to become friends with. And I said, would you look at the script just as an Afrikaans person and tell me what you think? And she said, we need to give it to the people at Mnet who deal with the film, Jan du Plessis. And before we knew it, they had come on board to help us make this film that has taken almost 15 years to get to this place.
Where did David meet John Freddy?
I used to be very much involved with the Sitengi, which was in Cape Town, which is a film and television market. And I just met John on the steps. And he was standing there smoking a cigarette, and we just started chatting. And he told me his story, and it was just very, very engaging.
Tell us the story, well, because it is an engaging story.
You meet a man in Cape Town, and he says to you, he looked like the kind of guy, he looked like a colored guy in Cape Town who probably most people would want to avoid. But he looked intriguing, and we struck up a conversation. And he told me that he had left school when he was young, had gone to jail, spent a lot of his life in jail, and that he had written this script about his life. And the script was really about how he discovered storytelling in jail and raised his status in jail as a storyteller. And I thought, wow, that's unique, that's different, never heard that before. What took a really long time, because his first draft was really quite gripping, but it wasn't written as a film script, So it took time. He had to go to almost like film school, if you like. So the National Film and Video Foundation sponsored him to do courses in screenwriting.
Was he a good writer?
Well,
or was it very crude?
John is
I don't mean crude in swearing.
I think John is a really naturally talented storyteller. So when he put his stories to paper, they were great stories.
Are these true stories he's telling?
Yes.
When he was in jail, he was telling true stories.
Oh no, when he was in jail, he was telling made-up stories.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But so his stories on paper were good and gripping, but they weren't written to the formula of a screenplay. Screenplay writing is quite an art in itself, and it's almost a science in a way, isn't it? It's a bit of both. And he needed to learn that, which he's done. But what people kept saying to me at the time was, you've got a great story. Why don't you find a great scriptwriter? And I was saying, no, I want the film to be in John's Afrikaans. I want it to be in the Afrikaans of the 1960s. I want it to be in the Afrikaans of the prison language of the time, and in his words, So it took a long time.
How long did he spend in jail? I mean, and what was the reason he went to jail in the first place? This is 1960s.
Yeah, look,
it's a different South Africa to
I think
the South Africa
when you see the film, you'll see. I mean, then in the 60s, as it is today, life on the Cape Flats is really tough. And that's what's interesting about the film. It's like a world that we never normally get into, So it's fascinating to go right in there and see what happens in the townships, in the coloured townships of the Cape Flats, 1960s was a bit different, but it's not all that different.
I was going to ask the question, is this a message that will carry?
Yeah, I think that the socioeconomic difficulties that people had back then, they still have them now. For a young man or a young woman to come out of, actually, let's say most townships, not just the Cape Flats, because I grew up in a township. I grew up in Alexander Township. And to actually get out of that socioeconomic space and go on to become an artist in any form, whether it's storytelling, music, anything, to actually just get out and make a life for yourself in this country, it is still very difficult.
But he came out and got involved again, apparently. He didn't completely shake off.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to tell too much of the story of the film, but yeah, it's a story about it's a rites of passage film, you know. I think every country has one of those films, hey, you know, England, America, you know, I think in South Africa, this is probably like, it is a big film in that way. It's 2.5 hours long. It's not like the full biography of his life, but it starts off when he's young. So you see the young John and his mates, you know, and as they grow up, they get involved in petty crime, which leads to jail and one thing and another. But the story involves them, as you say, when they come out of jail, what happens to them as a group. So it's to do with their friendship in jail, and then what happens when they come out of jail, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And the brotherhood of that, and also the fact that you do lose something that we don't often, and that's the thing, in South Africa, we haven't really told those stories of, it's not about just the political situation. It's about people are living there. People have been living there, and these people have had lives and mothers and fathers, because whenever we think of people that do crime, we often don't think that they had parents, that they were given certain values, you know, but we often forget that a society also shapes a person. And John's universe shaped him, just like it is shaping many young men in this country. Your environment shapes you. And I think he is speaking towards that. To what extent does your environment shape you? And to what extent do you then shape yourself within that environment?
Is that the message? Is that the big message of the
You know what?
movie?
There are so many. I mean, our tagline is every gift has a price. And for me, that's so profound, because you don't become whatever you become without something that you have to sacrifice, without perseverance or patience, or saying no sometimes to the thing that you think would be great at that time. But there is a sacrifice. You know, I mean, it's a cliche of, you got to work hard. You hear it when you're a child, you hear it when you're older, and you say, what does it mean? And actually what it means is that you've got to give up something.
And that you have a gift, but how do you find it? You know, people say everybody has a gift, but where is that gift? Sometimes it takes people their whole life to find it, or they find it on their deathbed. And for John, he found it, strangely enough, he found it in jail. And then when he left jail, he got a job as a security guard. And he says that, you know, when he was 50 years old, one day he was just decided, I've had enough of this, and he walked out, came home, said to his wife, I've given up my job. She was working as, you know, on the checkout at a supermarket, and she was like, you can't do that. You know, 20 years later, that's what he did. But it's taken that length of time for him to live the dream of saying, I've lived this life, I want to write, I think I can, you know.
I want to tell my story.
How did he make money in the meantime? I mean, that's
an interesting question. So what John did in the meantime, obviously he relied on family, and they had 5 or 6 children. But what John did was he worked for various organizations, like CRED and NICRO and so on, going to jails around the country, trying to encourage young people not to do crime and to learn other skills like creative writing and so on. You know, the Afrikaans Cultural Organization actually put him in he was part of a creative writing course.
Is it a colourful script? Is it a very colourful script? I mean, because the colour, you know, coloured's interpretation of language is wonderful. They have ways of saying things that
I have to say, when I read the script, and I grew up in Alexander Township in the 80s, and I was in a coloured, well, my neighbours were coloured. We were more mixed than after we were separated. So I speak Afrikaans. And I remember that when I read the script, it was in English and Afrikaans, but my eyes kept going to the Afrikaans because it was the Afrikaans I knew. It was the Afrikaans I had heard on the street. It was what I call the street Afrikaans, the walking Afrikaans. You know, it had gees, that wonderful word that nobody else has in the world except for us in South Africa. It had a gees. When you say soul, it's not the same thing, but gees is something else.
You know, it's a very interesting thing because, I mean, there's so much talk about Afrikaans, and the film is in Afrikaans. But and of course, it's very accessible to the white Afrikaans audience, particularly accessible, as you're saying, to the coloured Afrikaans audience. And obviously to me as well. You know, it's subtitled in English, and for me, not really knowing any of those cultures really, except secondhand, you know, it's totally accessible.
Did you get big stars or seasoned
Well,
professionals?
every
or
seasoned colored actor, every well-known colored actor, every good colored actor is in this film. So if you weren't in Cape Town in 2050 making Skollie with us,
But
we don't know where you were.
We also had to go to a lot of schools because we had to find the boys, the older boys,
Yes.
but we had to find the younger versions as well. So we went to like many, many schools around the Western Cape looking for those. So those are first-time actors, you know.
is this your background, David? I mean, have you always been in movies, or is this a
No,
completely
this is
new
our first-
project? Is it your first
This is our
project?
first feature
But he's
film.
been
Yeah.
producing.
Okay.
He's been producing TV, documentaries. He's even made a
Globally, or
For many
South-
years, yeah. I've done in South Africa. I live here, and I've been here since for a while. But I've been, as Mashidi said, I've been doing television drama and documentaries, a lot of political documentaries. That was really my history, and I moved from documentary into drama. But this is our first feature film. Yeah.
It's my first time producing. My
Enjoy
background.
it? Is it better being that side of the camera or in front
Do
of
you
the
know
camera?
what? I think that it's made me appreciate the process of the work that I do in front of the camera. And it also made me understand how much you actually pick up being in front of the camera, how much you're listening. You know, it's incredible because ears don't have a lid. So you hear things, you learn things without even realizing that you've learned things. I think it's much more of a business, and it's more about management, but it's also creative. So you're combining your creativity with a business skill. You do need a business skill to do this. It is a business. It's not.
But you
Do you
really
enjoy it? I mean, is it tough?
Listen, it was tough. We were two producers. We were on set literally every day. I think there were 2 days that we were not on set. We were in the trenches with our crew, with our actors.
And Mashidi's acting experience was really, really helpful there. I could turn to her and say, "What do you think about that?" And she would say, "Not quite sure." And then we
Who
would deal with
directed
it.
it? Who's
A young coloured man.
coloured chap
yeah,
as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
Darren Joshua, who I think is a general, a soldier. He led us, and he led us well. I mean, it's a big film with a lot of cast, with a lot of extras.
We're looking forward to this. I love the name Noem Skollie, and I really wish you all the very best, and I hope it does succeed and lives up to the kind of dreams that you want, and especially for John, to have his story told. I think that's the most important, having gone through what he does. With Mashidi, David, thanks so much for being with us on the couch.